Let me get a bottle of wine, and then let's start this thing, okay?
Okay.
Should have got a coffee for this. I don't believe I met you, BigYellowPraxis.
We've not met. No, I've been on a couple of these with Chris before. I've just Googled you. Yeah, nice, cool. I'm gonna have to watch some of your videos. I'm now in the presence of like a proper YouTuber.
So you're a creator yourself?
Yeah, I do music stuff mainly. Well, yeah, I do music stuff. I occasionally get into arguments online, but it's not like a productive thing.
No, it's not. They are fun.
So today we're talking about Douglas Murray, Fit and Fresh, Joe Rogan, and Jordan B. Peterson, right? Don't expect anyone to be an expert in all of those, but each of you have told me that you're ready to talk on one of those, so we'll sort of hand the mic over when people are comfortable. We're scoring them on Grift, so how good they are at sort of getting paid or being disingenuous or farming clout in the culture wars. Intellect, Menace to society, entertainment, and legacy.
Okay.
So yeah, I will share. I'll do it quickly now. Obviously, this isn't the recording. We'll start in a sec.
Give me some time for.
This was last week's episode.
Yeah, I watched a little bit last week's. Seems it's gonna be really fun.
So we scored, Alex Jones super high and concluded he should be in the WWF, rebrand himself. Tim Paul, medium. He's far too dangerous and far too grifty, but not very entertaining. I was describing him earlier to someone. I was like, some people at All Lives Matter. Tim Paul is consistently complaining like Black Lives don't matter. That seems to be his grift really hard right now. And then Milo Yiannopoulos obviously had his heyday, which has now passed. Sam Harris.
Yeah, I haven't heard this in years.
Well, no, this is the spoiler I said at the end, is that he's just joined Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign.
What?
Yeah, how fucked is that? And then Dave Rubin would disagree with this. I think Meringue thinks he has some intellect, so that'll be interesting to start the
Are we sure of that?
I mean,
Positive of that.
a one is not fair, I think.
I mean, if he's not a one, who is what I'd like to put to you. Like, who is below him intellectually? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Lovely. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking. We attempt to go beyond the binary narratives with tribalism and ego in the discourse of politics and current events with the hope of finding something a little bit more radical. However, these days we're just doing the tired old easy format of shitting on the right and making fun of how weird they are, because that's fun content. So last week we had a wonderful review of the people you see on the screens now: Alex Jones, Tim Paul, Sam Harris, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Dave Rubin, taking the intellectual out of the intellectual dark web. And I thought we'd, talk about some fresh faces this week. But before we do that, I'll let the gentlemen, people on the call, introduce themselves. Let's go round. So I'm Chris. I'm here often. Hi. BigYellowPraxis, we had you on last week. Anything further you want to say to introduce yourself?
Hello. I do music stuff on my channel, BigYellowPraxis. Praxis. Can't even say it. Praxis.
Takes practice.
Yes,
say praxis. So. And then Philosynoir, why don't you give us a howdy hi and tell us what you're about?
Hello, I'm Philosynoir. I create channels for YouTube. I create content on YouTube. Most of my content focuses on Blackness and just the history, mostly with a Americentric focus. But if you're into learning a little bit more, Jesus, my words, learning a little bit more about those types of things, then I'm definitely the channel for you. And I try to avoid academic jargon as much as possible. So if you hate that as well, I'm here for you.
Nice, awesome, and welcome back as well. We had you on a couple of years ago now. Wow.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, very nice to have you back, just and then the Buddha himself. We're joined by Menace.
Yeah, a little bit less often here than you lately.
Yeah, mate, we've missed you. It's
been
good
a
to have
while.
you back. So today we are going to talk about FreshandFit, someone I wasn't familiar with before. I was asked to have a look at them. Yeah. This is why we do it with this format, so no one has to watch too many videos of too many of these terrible people. We're going to be talking about Joe Rogan. We're going to be talking about Jordan Peterson, or Geordie P to his friends. and I'd like to talk about Charles Murray as well, who probably the Americans don't know so well.
You didn't give me that.
Douglas Murray.
That's
the one. I keep getting this wrong. It's Douglas Murray, not Charles.
Murray. Yeah.
Charles Murray's that bell curve bell end,
yeah,
right?
I was like, I know about him.
We talked about him with Sam Harris, and he's Charles Murray's brilliant because he's just something that a lot of people get drawn to. You know that meme, like he's saying to the daughter, "Don't look at those people," and then suddenly, and a lot of these centrists,
the bell curve,
get drawn to the I'm not racist. It's just the culture, the hip hop music, and Charles Murray's the gateway drug to that. Grift. No, we're talking about Douglas Murray, who have you heard of Philosynoir?
I don't think I have actually.
Okay, good. So we're a cultural exchange across the Atlantic we're doing here. That's good.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Oh, I feel like I'm not gonna like him.
Oh, you're not going to like many people on this list. Before we get into it, Philosynoir, you weren't here last week. Do you disagree with any of our tiering? Do you think Alex Jones doesn't belong in S tier, or do you think Dave Rubin doesn't belong in D tier?
No,
actually,
you're mostly correct. I just
think
think more people entertainment value. More people should be in that entertainment value. I think a lot of them are grifting.
Yeah,
a lot of them. Alex
Why is
Jones,
Sam Harris on the list?
Why is Sam Harris on the list? When was the last time
he's
you
not-
heard Sam Harris?
It's not right way.
Yeah, he
That's
is
a while ago.
Yeah, this is a lot of people's problem. Like everyone heard
he's
Sam
done
Harris
right
an
now.
age ago, and he was like
5 years.
reasonable, but he's just kind of gone down this "do Black Lives Matter" rabbit hole. Like, aren't the
Like,
police just doing their
around
job, sort of
The
thing?
rest of the intellectual dark web, and he started off talking about atheism, which was chill. Then he randomly ran into IQ and race. I'm like, how did we get here?
Yeah. He just could not stay away from that danger line.
I guess atheism got too boring for him.
I mean, yeah, we'll retread it, but he started with a lot of atheists. You go down that anti-Islam path.
Yeah.
Right.
He was critical of Islam as well.
Yeah, and he did a few controversial
there's-
videos where he says, "Oh, we should racially profile people on flights," and that's
No, we shouldn't, but
That's
it makes sense if you don't think about it.
problematic.
He's always been a bit of an edgelord. Like, he knows how to get a good headline, but I think it used to be spicily playing the game for clickbait, and then he went more and more down that rabbit hole. And so, yeah, I think he's gone from, he's one of those people that calls himself on the centre left, but if you look at the last 5 years of his takes, have always been towing a quite far right vibe, really.
One sec.
Yeah, so Sam Harris, we talked about this last time. I mean, obviously when early noughties, when it was all 80s and all that, I was like, oh, this guy's all right. Stopped paying attention for a while, came back to it, listened for a while, and it was fine. And then slowly started realizing that he has gone off the deep end. And this was maybe 5 years ago. And I was just getting weirder and weirder. Yeah. Strange guy.
So It's a shame. It's a shame. All right, Marang, you want to defend Dave Rubin? I'd really like to hear that.
Oh, Jesus. You gave me the worst job
I
as a
just
lawyer. Dave Rubin is a human being who probably could learn better if given at least one book, but I don't think the right wants him to ever read.
They removed his library
Keep
card.
them away from like libraries and any type of search engine that gives them like a different. They're just always over their shoulder, controlling their SEO, making sure they don't ever go down the wrong like algorithm hole.
I don't think this is entirely fair, because this is basically saying that the people on Young Turks have not read a book, because this is where he came from, right? I think the danger with him is much more worse, is that he took the money, right? He sold out.
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
And also, I
can't
think
always see
Dave
the
Rubin
receipts.
is just, he's anti-federalist, right?
you can't always see the receipts, but with
He's-
Dave
he-
Rubin, he officially got paid by the Cato Institute. You can actually like see him on their payroll, which I find interesting.
Was he not paid by the Koch brothers as well?
Yeah, the Cato Institute is a Koch brothers own thing.
Ah.
Exactly that. So,
No,
Yeah.
God, so he doesn't read. He just gained a morality.
well, but fair enough. He got paid. Like a lot of the people on this list just did it for the lols.
And also, just in reply to something said before, I hope this isn't controversial, but I do sometimes think that maybe some of the people on the Young Turks probably haven't read a book. I'm not always convinced.
That wouldn't
there.
surprise me either.
Obviously, they're nowhere near as bad as the
Fair
people on
enough.
this list, but I don't have a particularly high opinion of them either. But that's just me. Let's not go down that avenue.
Brutal.
Fair enough.
Young Turks just created several little problematic creators out of. Wow.
Well, this is a big part of it, is that like once you're just farming for content, I think I said about Tim Pool that, you know, I don't think he went out with this necessarily being paid by this person on high telling him, here's the agenda we want you to push, but the algorithm sort of skews you that way, right? Like if you're sort of
Yeah.
race baiting, you get more clicks, and so some of these people are algorithm led, which is even weirder, the idea that AI has pushed them into being who they are. Fucking
It's
hell.
so odd.
That's dark.
Sometimes I wonder for the grifters, how is like Thanksgiving with their families? I noticed like people who know they're lying and know that like, the things they say are like bullshit. So I'm just wondering, how do they like justify it to like the people in their life? Or like, is this, you're believing this? Like, obviously not. But like, how do you justify it to them? Like, I get paid for it, but
I just think the saddest for Dave Rubin in particular, because I think everyone has an awkward Thanksgiving. Everyone's got one. These people have chosen to be the awkward person at the family table. Maybe, who knows? I mean, I imagine Alex Jones has a much more racist uncle.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But
Imagine
yeah,
Alex Jones is a chill family member.
yeah, right. He's probably the liberal hippie in their group. But I just think, like Dave Rubin, it's so sad that when you the highlights of him watching Trump not win election is one of the greatest moments of YouTube history ever. I can't recommend. Just stop watching this and go watch that now if you haven't. But then the sad thing when you know he always going on about how his right-wing friends are more supportive of his homosexuality than the so-called progressive left. Until he adopted a kid, and then they all turn their back on him, and it's like, oh, Dave, did you really not see that happening? Like,
then he tried to
surprised Pikachu face.
Married. He got married and Ben said he wouldn't come to his wedding. I'm like, that's your friend.
Yep, yeah, that's the company you've chosen to keep. So, all right, that was last week. I'd recommend you watch it. It was a fun episode. This is now. Shall we start with Joe Rogan or Dr. Jordan B. Peterson?
I'm happy to start anywhere.
Or Peterson.
Yeah, let's go with Jordy P. All right. So, just as a reminder, we are scoring them on Grift, Intellect, Menace to Society, Entertainment, and Legacy.
So I believe was I giving the lowdown on Jordy B?
Yeah, over to you, mate. Go for it.
So arguably the world's greatest Kermit the Frog impersonator. No matter what anyone ever says about him, he still has that going for him. So he kind of, I mean, obviously he's been a clinical psychologist for quite some time now, I believe, like a few decades. He kind of came to world fame, didn't he, in around 2015, 2016 maybe. And it was largely off the back of these kind of lectures he did talking about literature quite often, or literature and art generally, and kind of culture in a very wacky way. And I'm kind of already preempting myself by saying it was very entertaining. If you watch those old videos now, like, this is a dude who kind of, he comes across as kind of like, you know, your wacky stoner friend who has all these really deep insights about, like, you know, this book that he read, which is it's just complete off the wall bonkers crap, and you listen to it, it's like, this is deeply entertaining but nonsensical. Anyway, and then he got, I guess it kind of happened around the same time, or maybe we got my chronology slightly mixed up, but it was the kind of the whole Bill C-16 in Canada trans stuff that he kind of lost his shit about, and that's really what kind of catapulted him into the stratosphere of fame, I guess.
Well, I think that the two are so deeply connected, because this often happens, right? Someone has a lightning rod moment, they get the media attention, right? And the big question is then, do they go on a tour and have to start making a lot of quick content, like Milo Yiannopoulos, who appeared from nowhere? But in the case of Jordan B, he already had, because he'd been filming all these wacky lectures, he had hundreds of hours of unseen videos up on YouTube. And then suddenly, when he went famous because of this, him arguing with snowflake students, right? He had this back catalogue. So that having that ready to go, any right-wing or left-wing grifters watching, that's the key, is having a shit ton of content, which is why we're pumping out videos like this right now.
And don't forget, Jordan Peterson also preys upon male insecurity as I'd say in the beginning of his career. He had this kind of self-help thing going. There's this big joke about him saying, clean your room and it just will make everything better. He wrote the 10 Rules for Life. I heard it was an all right self-help book, but not a great self-advice book, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is now we're getting into the kind of the Grift question, because to me, I suspect he is genuine. I don't say this to either insult him, nor do I say this to like excuse anything, but I think he is seriously mentally ill, and I don't say that lightly, because he's always said from the very beginning that he has like prophetic dreams. And I don't know if you could say that and not be on some level quite mentally ill. I don't know. I don't know how seriously to take him, or whether he's being like metaphorical. I don't think he is. I think there's something strange going on. So is there a grift element to it? I mean, I'm not going to answer the question like conclusively now, but I suspect there is a bit. Like, once you start noticing certain things are successful, I think he starts following it on that avenue. I think there's something where he is actually quite serious about the nonsense he comes out with, and he sincerely believes a lot of it. I think he's like very different from, let's say, Dave Rubin in that regard, who I don't think has a single thought going on in his kind of cavernous head. So you've kind of hit some of the history there as well. Yeah, he released these 10 or 11 or whatever
12 rules for life. Yeah,
12. There we go. Make it 10 or make it like 100. Don't make it 12. 12's an awkward number. I knew it was an odd.
Best-selling book, bro. Like, it worked.
What do I know? I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. You know, I don't know anything about best-selling books. But he did that. But yeah, back to that C-16 bill. He was saying that the bill compelled speech, so you'd have to refer to, for example, transgender students. I think it was not necessarily exclusive transgender people, but he was kind of more concerned about students or maybe clients, because he is a clinical psychologist, that you'd have to, like, you were compelled to refer to them by the pronouns that they chose, and he disliked the idea of compelled speech. So just to start, I agree in principle that, like, I don't think there should be a law to say that you have to say things, but the law didn't say that. So
yeah. He's very good at framing the argument in a ridiculous way, and you're like, well, when you put it like that, you've got a point. And then you look into it and you're like, but why did you put it like that?
Yeah.
I'm going to be jailed for calling my woman a husband. They're going to put me under jail for just accidentally saying she.
So I mean that brings us back around to the fact that, like, it cannot be denied that his voice is fantastic. I mean, it is a awful,
very
but it's fantastic. Yeah, so I guess since then he's done world tours. I think he released a book before becoming famous that was about like metaphor and art. I don't really know.
Chaos
like,
and
it was
order.
Kinda,
He's
chaos and order.
so
He's that dude.
coming from a psychological background. Like I'm quite familiar with a lot of the stuff he touches on, and he's pretty much an amalgamation of Jung and who does Shozanishin?
Oh,
Right.
he loves Solzhenitsyn. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
he always like you know these people that always quote Nietzsche. He's one of those people that's read
Yeah.
two books and been like, just all if in doubt, quote Jung or Shozanishin.
What is it with Nietzsche and edgelords?
Because it's
It's
a
the
book that no
mustache.
one
It's
else has
just-
read. So if you can
it's
say
just the
I've read
mustache.
Nietzsche, then you can say, but you wouldn't get it, bro, because Nietzsche's smarter than all the other philosophers, and he shits on all the other philosophers, and it's just the same. I know people that have read Jordan Peterson's books, and that's the only book they've read. That's why he's often called a stupid man's intellectual, right?
That's beautiful. I love that label of him.
Yeah, he's this classic person who claims to have all the answers to very complicated and difficult questions. So you talk about the gender pay gap, and he's like, "You mean the gender pay gap myth?" Oh, takedown, shots fired. Fuck on. And you're like, but is it? Like...
Have you seen him argue why people should take psychedelics instead of like going through anti-smoking rehab? He was arguing with this guy from the Atheist Experience, which is a very popular atheist program. I haven't watched him in a while. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was like
Matt Dillahunty, isn't it? That's the.
Yeah, I believe that's it. Yeah, he was telling them how if you take psychedelics once, you'll never smoke again. He's like, that's not true. It's like, what's kind of like evidence? I'm like, what?
That's very simple way of putting it. Yeah.
It's like you talk to some.
I mean, I like the fact that he's pro psychedelics, but that's it's a horrible way of putting it. Yeah.
He sounds so smart until he talks on a topic I know about, and that's when you catch him out. You're like if you talk about when he's talking about Jung and the chaos of the Old Testament, and you're like, whoa, that's intense, bro. Like you say, it sounds like a weird stoner academic going off on one. You're like, crazy.
No,
shit.
he kind of literally is. I mean, he's on Joe Rogan. That's basically the entire vibe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, didn't it turn out he actually had quite a serious addiction to benzos?
Sleeping pills. Yeah, benzos, sleeping pills. Yeah.
And then he had to
go to Eastern Europe.
Yeah, instead of taking like the actual kind of like, I don't know, evidence-based kind of treatment for it, did he go to like Russia and he was put into like a medically induced coma or something? Is this true?
Yeah. He took some very extreme therapy. Yeah. And then there was a while where people thought he might have brain damage, and he wasn't in the news. And people were like, "Oh, did this procedure go wrong?" But I think benzos is, and I think he was far down the rabbit hole with the benzos. Like it's a heart addiction. Like you're saying evidence-based therapy, but benzo addictions are hardcore, right?
Right. Fair. That's fair.
And this was when he was like speaking at 3 podcasts a day and then performing in the evening, and he was saying things like, I don't need to sleep because I have a meat only diet.
I was going to say the meat diet.
The problem is those vegetables, those damn vegetables.
Didn't he spend a good while just eating red meat and salt? That's basically all he ate. And his daughter is a like a diet kind of Instagram dieter type thing, and I think, as far as I understand, this red meat and salt and water diet just kind of was inspired by or influenced from his daughter, and now I've seen her on YouTube as well, and yeah, they seem to have like a little dynasty going, which is that's a thing now that we all have to be subjected to, I guess.
And then her husband is, I mean, I haven't checked his credentials, but according to Jordan Peterson, he's left, and that has shifted Geordie. I mean, it's hard to say because he's had such a weird couple of years in and out of rehab.
Is he left or is he a liberal?
Well, it's not hard to be left of Jordan Peterson, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Like left of Jordan Peterson is Democrat.
Yeah. But then he did write his, so he did his rules for order and then his rules for chaos, which was more like, because he thinks about the left and right in terms of order and chaos, right? Like, and he
I
did
think
say
the
it was
problem with him
important.
is
Yeah, go for it.
exactly that. It's all black and white. It's order and chaos. He very much lacks any nuance in his speech and thinking. Right. If you listen to a couple of things I was listening today, it's all these very extreme statements, and he never explores what the context and complexity and the nuances of any of the statements that he makes. So,
I mean, you see why it's very Trump era stuff, right? Like in an era of post-truth, what do we believe? Everything's hard. He just came forward and had the confidence to be like, everything that 90% of people are saying are wrong. Here's the truth, and everyone's like, wow. And then, you know, short news format where you've got a 4-minute interview and no time to fact check anything that's just been said. He just blew up on every TV appearance he ever did because they just have these really strong opinions that people were like, you know, there's no way to dig into why it's all nonsense. Yeah, he appeared like a sorcerer.
That annoys me about debates. You can cite a source completely wrong, but the fact that you cited a source makes it right. Because no one's gonna like look you up middle of the debate. You're only like make up a bigger, more like exclusive source that does not exist that proves them wrong at that point, I guess.
Yeah. So, yeah. On like debates are an interesting thing. I spend too much of my time debating people online, and I am very. Anybody cites something, I will go through it. And I will waste my time reading it, and I will do it sentence by sentence, and I will pass it to them. And usually, I mean, obviously, some of the people I debate with are completely like utterly deranged, kind of like racist, racial realist people, and they'll cite some study, and you go through it, and the first sentence, you know, disagrees with their conclusion immediately. And
they haven't read the thing
it.
that they
not even the first sentence.
They won't have it.
Right?
Yeah.
Heroes
it happens all the time.
Example of that, actually. Like the one that I think most people have seen, because it's a boys club or whatever he calls it. That study he cited says in like the first paragraph the opposite of what he says about trans suicide rates being higher no matter whether you transition or not. I'm like, bro, it's like if anyone took the 5 seconds to just look at that study, which most don't, no.
Yeah. And Jordy B gets caught out all the time. Again, anytime he talks on a subject I know about, you're like, And I saw him like, talking about environmentalism on Joe Rogan. And he was just saying nonsense. And again, this tendency to just say really strong, really bold statements. Just the wheels fell off of it because you're like, he was just like, but it's not really a science, isn't it? They don't have any data. And you're like, but they do. And you could have found that out with a 5-minute Google search. So why do you have a strong opinion on it, bro?
I think
it's kind of like an old family member who doesn't listen to you no matter what you say. It's like, no.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say, I think I remember around that time when he was first on Joe Rogan. I feel like he was on Joe Rogan a few times. That was kind of, for me, up until then, he was an interesting kook. You know, it's like, this guy's wacky. I love it. You know, if you put it on you, and these kind of ridiculous, overblown, grandiose dichotomies are fun. And then you start hearing him talk about the environment, and you're like, whoa, that was, because for me, that's something I know a lot about. Like, my day job is kind of that stuff. And I think around then he also went on a Vice interview, and he was just saying like some just like downright really just misogynistic shit, and I was like, this dude's not just wacky, this is pretty bad. Like the wacky fun is kind of fading, and all we're left behind with is this kind of strange old man.
It's worse, I think, than strange old man, because I disagree with the fact that he hasn't read a book. He is quite smart, and he does use very academical language, and that does impress a lot of people. And at first, I think a lot of people were having a hard time debating him on the content as well, because he would barrage them with this whole academic terminology, right?
And he's a gish galloper, and he does switch between
TV interviewers
Greek mythology, the Bible, psychology.
Yeah, right.
Soviet Union problems.
Very fast. Make a lot of extreme statements, very big statements, and then they immediately continue on to the next, right? And people were having a hard time sort of picking that apart, I feel, at first.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to
People gotten better at it.
I go to like sociology and history class to debunk what it said to get to the first point. That's like a lot of it, right? They give you like this entire like wrong paragraph. And in order to like prove it wrong, you your thing's gonna be longer than theirs. So now you feel like you're galloping them. But I hate when people do that. Bench also very bad, very good with that.
Sam Harris. Yeah.
But this is a big strategy of the right? To make a very simple statement that takes you so long to refute that you kind of already lost the audience at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just it's kind of related to what I said before. Like, if I get into these things, I like to parse it sentence by sentence. Like, what's going on here? What's going on here? What do these mean? But actually, when you tend to do that, people get annoyed because they want you to just look at the kind of preponderance of evidence, which isn't actually evidence taken singly. It's just a big pile of things. And if you don't look at it and go, wow, that's a big pile of evidence in your favor.
You end up like becoming the cop with the speeding gun and like, come on, this guy's having fun and just wants to go fast, like Sonic the Hedgehog, and you're slowing him down with your boring fact checking.
There is a bit of that vibe, yeah. But back to Jordan Peterson before that, I certainly don't think he's not stupid at all. He's clearly well read. But again, to me, and again, I'm not saying this in a kind of frivolous way. I think the more you hear him talk, the more you're like, this sounds like deeply disordered like thinking. This dude, I fully believe that he believes a lot of it. I think there's definitely a grifty element, but I think a lot of the times he says things, I think this guy, I don't know, I could be reading him wrong because a lot of people do disagree, which is fair enough. But I hear him talking, I think, I don't know, I genuinely think he believes it.
I agree. I think it's generally deranged.
Yeah. I think unfortunately,
or just so egotistic and into his own little sort of weird thought patterns that I think the grift element is low, but the danger element with it is still quite big. Right?
The danger high, but I agree with you. I think he kind of believes most of it.
But before we score him, there's two moments I want to zoom in on which I found really interesting. And one is that he was forever berating the left, saying that equality of outcomes, right, leads us to Soviet gulags. Right, so he was forever saying, like, I like the left, but the problem they don't realize is that if we let people have equality, we end up in Soviet gulags, and that's always what happens with the left.
That's the end of all things.
And equality would be the worst thing, right? Like, imagine that. And then bizarrely, where he and it was Joe Rogan, who we'll be talking about just shortly, who called him up on this. He was like, the problem is with women wearing their makeup and their short skirts in the office, right? Just asking for it, you know? And then there's all these problems where people are sleeping around and it's not an ordered moral society, and that leads to problems. And so what we need to do is like force people into monogamous relationships through religious dogma. And Joe Rogan was like, but isn't that the equality of outcome you were just saying was so bad?
Yeah. I do love.
That's silly, Jordan. Well, why would we do that?
I'm getting ahead onto Joe Rogan here, but I do love the few moments when Joe Rogan intellectually dunks on someone. I mean, it's Joe Rogan, so it doesn't happen a lot, but there are a few shining moments. One was with Dave Rubin, and it's just amazing watching it.
Yeah, Dave Rubin's talking about libertarianism, and Joe Rogan's just like, right, but if you let people build houses without laws, like, the builders are just fucking build the laziest, shittest house in the world, and the house will fall apart. And Dave Rubin's like, no, they wouldn't actually, because of the free market. And Joe Rogan's like, I know builders, bro.
Yeah.
They fucking would let everyone die.
But the glorious moment is when Dave Rubin actually says, the free market would kick in. Like it's just like an engine that just needs to be started. Like, it just kicks in. It's just like an automatic, it's a failsafe to just kick in and just help. It's like, you don't even understand your own positions, do you, Dave? You actually don't.
Because they're not his. They're the Cato Institute.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always hard to resist an opportunity to get back to dunking on Rubin. And let's not do that. I'm really holding myself back here because this is why he's in
You really
D.
think it's just
Rubin started off semi-respectable. Now he's kind of shit. It's like kind of so annoying and sad. It's like, I watched you grift.
At least he got paid. Like I say, some of these people just did it for the likes. So yeah, that was a big moment for me with Jordy P. Was he was so about the importance of freedom above all other values until women wanted it, and then it's like, whoa, let's not go too far.
Freedom for people who look like me.
So I think it's really, sorry, just a minor
Yeah.
note. It's very curious. It's kind of, it kind of ties in with, it's not super curious really, but it ties in with his kind of self-conscious profundity that he's kind of aiming for, and I think that a lot of his fans really kind of like from him. His subreddit is Jordan Peterson Descensus ad Infernos. Obviously, it has to be in Latin, descending into the Inferno, I would assume, and it just kind of ties into everything about him. He seeing the world through these kind of really, really appealing to a certain type of person, but really kind of I don't know, blunt and a bit stupid dichotomies. It is framing everything as this heroic struggle.
He
like
is
you're
the
not cleaning your room.
order dictator riding
Exactly.
the chaos dragon.
Exactly. You're not cleaning your room. You're taming the chaotic dragon, and it's just like, well, this is slightly ridiculous. I mean, when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I know I'm just playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't think some of his fans realize that if you're tidying your room, it can be good. But you are just tidying your room. Like it's not a big deal.
I mean, have you ever tidied your room while listening to Rage Against the Machine? It's an experience.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Recently cleaned my room, and I'll give it to Jordan Peterson. It did help slightly. I'm still poor. Still have the issues. There's still things going on, but hey.
But now your room is clean.
Home, I have a nice space.
Now your room is clean. You are allowed to criticize the establishment. Congratulations.
That's the only thing I give Jordan Peterson meaningly credit for whenever I clean my room. Sorry, I did it. I would.
I actually believe, give him some credit. I believe he invented the idea of cleaning one's room. I think.
Yeah, I never cleaned my room before while reading.
Yeah. How did we
so-
live before?
In filth. I'm sorry, I'm on the Jordan Peterson subreddit still, and I've just one of the top voted threads at the moment is, I just heard a radio advert promoting homosexuality. And it's just okay, so this is a full blown right wing nut job territory now.
Gay agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible to think that that's the reason someone became gay.
It's like
Because
one
of those
time
damn
I-
adverts. You
Yeah,
clicked
yeah.
on the wrong pop-up once and shit, you're gay.
Gaying the kids.
My favourite moment before we score Peterson was his debate with Slavoj Žižek. And it was at the height of his power and Benzi addicted, fueled chaos run. And it just became apparent that he had not had the time to prepare for the interview, for the debate, and hadn't actually read the pamphlet he was debating, and so was just kind of reading the spark notes. And Žižek was so gentle and patronizing in his breaking it down, but really compassionate, because Peterson does very well when there's a combat there, right? And he went in fist clench, ready, and Žižek was just like, "Ah, hun, are you okay? Have you
I
read
think that's the
this?"
best way to meet them. Just talk to them very slowly.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had asked him, "Are you okay?" And the answer clearly was, "No, I'm tired. I want to eat some vegetables and sleep for a month." But it's really interesting. I was talking to Peterson fans, and they were like, "No, Peterson destroyed Žižek in that debate." I'm like, how? At what point? Please show me the clip where he made a point. Fucking hell.
If you're a Peterson fan, everything he says is a good point.
Yeah, it works out simply. I mean, a lot of people do work that way, I guess, but I do feel, I don't know whether he still has such a kind of cult around him, but he did for a while. I simply have to assume that it has worn off a little bit because he's just not around as much. I do feel the kind of rose tinted glasses have kind of faded a little bit, but I could be wrong.
So let's score him then. I'll let you have the honest praxis, and people can disagree if they want.
Right, so I'll throw it out there, and if everyone disagrees, fair enough. I'm gonna do it. It's out of 5, right?
Yeah, and Grift is hard for this man, right? Because
Yeah.
Grift is two things. It's get that money, but it's also how disingenuous you are to get that money.
Yeah.
And I think he's made a meteoric success. of it.
Yeah. I think I'll say a 2. I think it would be too generous to put him below that because he's clearly worked out what works, and he kind of leans into it at the very least. But I do think he genuinely believes, if not everything he says, then the vast majority of it. It is very hard to disentangle these things. Once you start making that much money, I think it's easy to start genuinely believing what the money tells you to believe. I think it just becomes easy, but I genuinely believe. I mean, this dude's been wacky for a good while. So
I think so many people imitate him now that looks like Grift, but as you say, I think he is genuinely riding the Chaos Dragon. I
think so, yeah.
Any strong rebuttal to that? Anyone disagree?
No, I agree with that.
All right. Oh, this is an interesting one.
Yes, I agree.
So I don't know how we rate it, because what did we say for Sam Harris? Because he kind of...
Sam Harris got a 5.
I think he's very intelligent, but not in the correct way.
Yeah, like you talked about D&D, right?
Smarter than the average
There's a difference between intelligence and wisdom, and he's definitely low on wisdom, high on intelligence.
You have to be moderately intelligent to grift well, and he's doing pretty well with it. So I'd say he's not an idiot, but
he's not
genius either.
I'd go 4. But
4.
does anyone think that's generous?
It might be slightly a bit 3.5 or 4, but 3.5.
Like 3.5. Yeah, I would say 3.5. Yeah.
3.5 maybe.
I mean, the quickness with which he thinks. So as I say, once he feels he's under attack,
yeah, I still think it's a 4. Yeah.
We'll go
very,
4.
I've seen moments where he's been ambushed by an interviewer, and he's when he switches into that gear, maybe it's the benzos that help, but he just
That's him on command. He's always ready.
Yeah, I've seen him go Super Saiyan in interviews, and it's very impressive. All right. This is an interesting one. How damaging is he to society?
Currently, right now, I feel like it's. I mean, he's just been kicked from Twitter as well, but I do feel like it's much lower than it was at one point, where it seemed like.
What was he kicked from Twitter for?
Some controversy to do with Elliot Page, I believe.
Oh right, being transferred.
Oh yeah.
What a surprise!
And not long ago, there was a picture of like a plus size model on the front of like a news on a Sports
Illustrated, yeah.
And he basically just retweeted it, being like, no. And it's just like, dude, no one asked to get over yourself. That's
the weirdest thing not beautiful. I do not like big women. All right.
Of all the things we want to hear from Jordan Peterson, what he faps to is low on the list.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just because you don't like her.
Very, very strange approach for him. But again, this comes to his slightly deranged kind of mentality. So, Menace to Society, I don't know. Like, if we kind of like average out him at his peak to him now, I might be tempted to go for 3.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because him himself is not dangerous, but like some of the other people on this list, they're a real gateway drug. So he appears as very reasonable. He doesn't often outright say the quiet bit, like he gently wolf whistles, but never actually says it too often. But once you start watching Peterson, I think Google should have 5 for Menace Society. It's their fault that you watch a Jordan Peterson video and the next thing that will get recommended is Ben Shapiro.
No, then eventually Stefan Molyneux or something. Yeah,
and that's the conveyor belt you're on once you want.
Yeah. So I do feel it's around 3. I think.
Oh god, Geordie B is just average on all measures.
So entertainment, I'm gonna have to give him higher on this. I feel like this is a 4 or something, because I think it wears thin relatively quickly. But if you're new to it, which I don't think anyone really is now, but it is like this is it's unique. There's nothing quite like it. In the same way that I don't know, I'm thinking of like music or something. A song can be terrible as well, but it can be deeply entertaining. Sometimes it's a bit like that. Sometimes it's like watching a car crash. Sometimes it's just like watching your stoner friend just telling you about his conspiracy theories. There's enough content in there to entertain for a while, but then it does wear thin, because it's kind of really, he has a main shtick, which is
if you think to his heyday though, he was a breath of fresh air, right? There were too many talking heads that all they had was talk, and he was, as you say, the breadth of, he could talk on so many different issues so passionately.
Yeah.
So little to say.
I was gonna say. And also, like, and again, this maybe this is a bit of a more grifty moment because it's hard to tell how genuine it is. Like when he does his crying shtick, like that's entertaining, and it is on one level refreshing, right? Because that's not something you see from like public intellectuals.
Kermit's sad
at
he's
all.
going to get sent to the gulag. Yeah.
But he does this thing where he's like crying about like his concern for like the well-being of young men, and he's like, is that real? I don't know. I kind of believe it is again on one level, but yeah, that's entertaining. There's something going on there where you're like, this is actually compelling to watch until it wears thin. So for me, I don't know. I would be tempted to give him a 4. He's certainly more.
Did you just
entertaining
give him a point because you like watching him cry? Is that really what happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
Over to young men being in danger. It's like, it's like out of all things to cry about, there's so many more pressing issues.
Oh, just those poor white young men. Won't someone think of them? Bless them.
Hey, they're going
Yeah,
through it.
maybe,
Need your help,
maybe
you know.
we screwed him too long, the Grift.
That's his break.
He knows his audience, right? Like, and that's an interesting thing. I have heard him talk about the demographics of his audience, and yeah, I don't know. For me, I think he just sees that as business and being successful and playing the game smartly. But
No, he reminds me just of those alpha quote unquote YouTubers who kind of give like a cooler, older, senior classman Big Brother vibe, like coaching younger men through it, but he's putting like an academic spin on it.
Yes, yeah. No, there is that vibe actually. That's true. It's true.
he's also on the gateway to like pick up artist stuff, right? Like it's that. Come on,
I feel
man,
like he
who
would
can't
be
get
there,
laid.
His would be very classical. Like, make sure you buy her a drink and put your jacket over the puddle when she's walking. Women love that. It's like his advice only works for his generation.
Yeah. Oh, I just remember that the whole chaos and order thing. I found it very strange. If you're gonna start, because you would be like, oh, chaos is women and order are men. It's like if you're gonna talk in really stupid like stereotypes, you'd put it the opposite way. I don't know.
Right? Have you ever had
Yeah.
female or male housemates at university?
But it's just like it's just like violent crime and
Women
stuff
don't
like
need
that.
Jordan Peterson telling them to tidy their rooms. I'll put it that way.
If
I was
you're
saying,
gonna
like, women haven't been causing chaos out here, like
talk- yeah,
comparably at least.
it's just I don't know. Like it's just if you're gonna talk in stupid stereotypes, then you'd imagine you'd want it to ring true in like a most kind of cliche kind of
But
way.
his audience have never met a woman, so
Oh,
he
yeah, that
doesn't
is true.
get challenged on that
is
statement.
true. That is true. Anyway, back to entertainment. I do think fall.
Which I don't think is fair either.
I'm full of unfair
Hey,
statements.
that's arguing the opposite. I think order and chaos is within every person, right?
Of course.
I don't think it's really fair to say, even though men historically maybe some issues, but
I'm swinging the opposite to point out how ridiculous it is to put it in binary
Yeah,
terms. I don't think we're disagreeing.
The point here isn't that like actually
Sure.
men are chaotic and women are orderly. It's just like it's just a weird way to archetype the kind
Once
of
you
No,
put
I
everything in
think-
binary buckets.
yeah. And then if you were gonna do that, I'm surprised that's the one you would pull out. It seems very strange. Yeah, I don't know. But entertainment, I still think 4.
4 out of 5,
I
I'll
do
allow
think
it.
so.
And
You know,
legacy. Sorry, go for it, mate.
Legacy. I don't think he's gonna. Oh shit! Actually, he might leave a legacy.
I have a feeling he'll be around in a few years' time. He'll come back.
I think he's had a huge impact. Like whether it's just going to be an indirect legacy at the very least, I think he's had such a huge impact.
It struggles from, you know how like the Beatles, like so many people sound like the Beatles now that you think, you know, like you show it to kids these days, and I'm like, it's okay. And I do worry
Yeah.
that he's got so many cover acts that he would struggle unless he really reinvented himself. But that is part of his legacy, the long tail of his weirdness.
Yeah, I think he's always gonna. He is now kind of even if he disappeared now and that or he did something to completely ruin his legacy or he just frittered away and he was no more. He kind of set up that. I'm talking like him now. Like he is kind of the archetype of that kind of profound, kind of right wing thing. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
his role and that's the part he played. And if someone else kind of fills that role, I feel like they're just going to be doing it off the back of him in some way. It'll be in his kind of idiom, if that makes sense. So I feel like, I feel like quite a big legacy. I couldn't say 5. He's not like
Well,
who else did we see?
we're talking about him at the trough, right? Like he needs to
Yeah.
reinvent himself. He needs to come out with a version 3.0. Like,
Yeah, true. He does. So I'm tempted to say like a 3 or a 4 if I was going to be generous, but I'm not really 100% sure. So 3.
I'm hearing. So is he A or B? This is the debate.
I think he's B.
Any disagreements there?
Yeah, I would rather watch Alex Jones before Jordan Peterson.
Oh, well, that's why Alex Jones is S tier, like
Yeah.
top. So, but do you think
I would
he's next to
say-
Tim Pool or A? I'd almost
I would
put him in A, because I would say Tim Pool's not entertaining. I don't
yeah.
think Tim Pool will be around in 5 years' time.
I think but just Tim Pool's sheer impact right now. I mean, he is huge. He's unbelievably
Right
huge.
now, yeah.
Right now. So maybe it does have like a kind of recency bias, which we probably have to have because we don't know, we can't predict
Sure.
the future. So
I mean,
that's my
the way-
stance.
He's probably going to be around a while. It's very low effort content.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Find the bad people in the news story and interview them. That's basically the shit.
That's the grift we're literally
Keep
doing
the
right
same
now.
talk- Keep up with the talking point by scrolling through Twitter.
Talking about the bad people. I really want to put him above Tim Pool just because I don't like Tim Pool. But is that unfair? Do you think he's alongside Tim Pool?
If you want to put him above, that's fine. Because at his peak, I mean,
His intellect's higher. His
that's not saying necessarily very much, but yeah.
his entertainment's higher and his legacy's higher. So I think
Imagine
it's
it's
scores
Peterson
higher
debate.
on 3.
Yeah, fair. I guess the difference, Jordan Peterson at his peak was like a real world celebrity, and Tim Pool is still an internet celebrity.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
if I-
amazing. So,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people I talk to,
Yeah, I
you know,
agree.
everyone on this channel probably knows exactly who Tim Pool is. I was talking to my friends and they have no idea who he is.
Yeah,
They're like,
I forget the bubble I'm in. I'm like
Yeah.
a degenerate like internet dweller. You know what I mean? Most people aren't, but everyone knows who.
Mareng was
Jordan.
having a go at me earlier in the group chat. He was like, "How do you have time to watch all of these videos?" I'm like,
Struggle of being chronically online.
And they're like
Yes,
long as well. Like
"Yeah, they
all these
are."
beautiful video essays, but they're 2 to 3 hours long.
Yeah,
Like,
none of
shit,
these
that's
people have
full
ever
time
made a
day job.
10-minute video in their life. Like, shall we go on to Joe Rogan or Fit and Fresh? Should we change gears and do, because we were talking about the Manosphere, toxic masculinity, pickup artist. Is that an unfair summary of Fit and Fresh? I've only watched a couple of videos in preparation for this. So
I think that is
Who's
in this
who?
very well.
Fit and Fresh. Well,
Fit and
why don't
Fresh,
you introduce them to those that aren't
I've
familiar?
never heard of them.
Oh, God, you're so fortunate. They're the leading pioneers of the new Manosphere movement. And they have been like in several controversies, just drama lately. Really surprised you haven't heard them. There's been like some people who come on and just basically called them out several times because their entire rhetoric is basically men can do all, but women should be submissive. It's just textbook misogyny. But somehow they just keep growing and growing. And despite them, that like at least 5 people I've seen come on to like basically call them out on their bullshit, they have been going strong. And the entire shtick is men can be better and women need to submit and be high value and need to learn that they're not special, but men are because they're men. And also men can have Instagram, but women cannot. It's awful.
What? So just telling you my like highlight reel, right? I gave myself 2 hours to go down this rabbit hole, and
How
watching
do
such
you have time to do this? Okay, now I am wondering.
I wish you watched like a short video.
watching just their highlight reel of like, okay, when I said I'd never date black women, just to be clear, last week I was saying that Asian women are submissive and subservient. So I'm not racist because I'm racist to every woman. Like,
This like, oh my god, I hate everybody. I hate everybody equally. Shut up. Shut up, bro.
but mostly
No,
women.
they throw little like tantrums whenever they get called out, and they don't even they can't even think of a good rebuttal, so they just never invite their guest again, and only invite guests who like listen and agree with them.
What I found fascinating as well is that I watched some videos where one of their guests was like pointing out their bullshit and how toxic a lot of what they were saying was. And then this was again just what came up in the suggestions, classic fit and fresh get dunked on by da 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 da. And then you watch their video and they've heavily edited it so it looks like they won that debate.
Yeah. That too. I don't know how they have gotten so big and so fast. Like, I didn't realize there was such a space. Well, I did, but I didn't realize for this like special brand of misogyny.
So I was shocked because you mentioned them. I was like, no idea who they are. I started watching their video. I was like, oh shit. I've got a friend who keeps telling me about this pickup artist advice he gets from this cool YouTube channel. And I was I think this is what he's watching.
No. They're awful. God, I wish we could watch like a short clip. There's so good ones.
I mean,
there's so many ones.
Send me a link of a clip you want me to show and I'll play it now. Like, just send it in the chat.
The one that like summarizes their idiocy.
Yeah, feel free. But I feel like.
So I was going to say, I also hadn't heard of them. I just watched the short video in advance of this, and I was like, it's just like a red pill stuff, isn't it? It's literally just that straightforwardly. I kind of thought that had died a death, and I didn't think it was going to come back to this degree. But these guys are doing very well. So
it's repackaged, right? Like, so this is very
it's
clever.
A very special brand of it, to where it's like almost the guys who think they're cool brand of misogyny, where it's kind of like woke, but like no, I'm not saying the thing. I'm saying what like nature intends, and this is just the way things should be. We're telling women truth that they don't want to hear.
Yeah, I'm too brave, right? This is the truth the media doesn't want you to know.
Right? Yeah, it's not at all how it's working so well.
I mean, there's a beautiful irony that you know it won't age. So they're like, oh, this is the shit that should get you cancelled. And like you're watching being like, you guys are about to get cancelled.
No, but they're like kind of like profiting off the cancelable like thing. I think some people go in with the idea of I'm the guy who doesn't want to get access to all the cancelable shit. So and when you say enough cancelable shit, they don't cancel you because they're used to it.
I know what you mean. And some people are smart enough, Trump, Milo Yiannopoulos, never apologize, never back down, right? I can tell that these guys aren't that. Right? Like I've seen a few of their like fake apology videos and I'm like, these guys are going to get caught up in a lot of shit they're doing. And let's just watch some of the madness. Honestly.
There's a NBA's player wife. I think she's actually a model or something. But she went on their channel because I think they kind of talked trash about her. And her clip with them is the most popular at the moment. She went in on them. And it's so satisfying.
This is the video I was talking about. So I saw her trashing them. And then on their channel, them re-editing the whole thing. So they're like, oh, we dunk on this Instagram bitch who doesn't know shit about life.
It's like, this is what this woman doesn't understand because they're a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as they say, they're equal opportunity offenders. They hate women, and they really are encouraging men to hate themselves as well. It really just becomes this grind culture where if you just do anything to make $1 million at all costs, then you can end up with a trophy wife who you don't have to talk to because you don't respect on any level whatsoever. That's the dream. That's the dream.
Sometimes I want to just go on these shows because it looks so easy to debunk them. It's like off after getting called emotional. Like, fuck. And being called triggered too, that would have been the end of it for me. God.
This is actually like going back in time like 8 or 9 years to,
it's the early Manosphere shit, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, that is peak Manosphere right now.
Can we just pay a little bit of attention to how completely uncharismatic they are? Like, what is the appeal of these two? They're not like witty or interesting. They're not. There's no repartee.
Feel like that certain type of man.
Again, like, so I've struggled with this. A lot of influencers looking at them and being like, "What is going on here?" And then you realize that their average audience is like a 15-year-old boy, and you're like, that's a 15-year-old boy's impression of a man.
Right. That does kind of that scans.
But yeah, it was just the the contempt in his eyes when she was talking, and he's like, and the talking points. You want to be like, oh, you're being emotional, and I've seen this more and more people calling them out. And you know, it's pickup artist stuff. It's gamifying, and you know, the sad thing is it does work, because most social encounters, if you play a numbers game, right, like I mean, I'd love to take this to in absurdness levels, right? Imagine if you just reframe the pickup artist game in terms of just making friends. Right, so go to a bar, introduce yourself to a bunch of guys, like express your value, and before long you'll have like 4 friends per month, and imagine that you keep doing that, and then you're gonna have 20 friends by the end of the year, winning at life. Like that, just right, we're all laughing at that, but that's what these guys are doing with just like collecting bodies getting laid. Like,
when you say it that way, it actually sounds kind of wholesome. Like,
I need that.
yeah, that's fine. But yeah, there's like the odd like little look at the camera where he's like, get a load of this one.
Yeah, and you can tell he has an audience of jeering men cheering him on. Yeah. And when it's out of context and not on, the interesting thing, it wasn't his podcast, it was someone else's, right? And so when everyone's just like, and again, it's just his bread and butter to be like, bitches be crazy, am I right, bros? Like, I mean, Vorsch does this at his worst, right? Like I've seen Vausch or what? Yeah, probably he wants to emphasize the German for unknown reasons.
No, he's not a Nazi. Come on.
He's an edgelord, and I think T1J talks about beautifully how we're entering a phase where there are edgelords on the. It used to be a exclusively right thing, right?
No, they're very on the left. It's kind of weird.
So someone wrote a book about this, and she's an Irish academic. I can't remember the name of the book. How useless am I? But she talked. You know, you go back in time a bit. You know, satire and what has been considered socially kind of subversive, what we might today call edgy, was for a good while. You go back to the 70s, quite a lefty thing. Yes. Because you know, racist humor wasn't subversive; it was just normal. Subversive, offensive humor to like people's sensibilities was like, oh, the Catholic Church, aren't they fucked up? Aren't they all pedophiles? That was what was against kind of like mainstream. And then it kind of switched.
I was thinking about this the other day. So a lot of the like free speech activists, like you know, the 50-year-old comedians who are now pissing people off, right? And it's because back in the day, the people who were policing speech were the right-wing Christian Puritans. Right? And so to say misogynistic, weird shit was to offend their sensibilities, and they were the police of speech and thought. And so you could claim to be righteous while saying very offensive stuff, because the arbiters of taste and what you could say were this oppressive right-wing Christian pearl clutching, won't somebody think of the women, you can't say that, you'll offend my mother, sort of thing. And that's how they got left behind, because now it's a different group of people saying like, you're punching down and being a dick, and they're still in the same mode of defense. I'm used to attacking this political powerful group. And yeah, anyway, that's another podcast for another time. So I'd be interested to hear, like, how do you think these people fit into the manosphere in general? And it's amazing how recycled it is from the early days of YouTube, like the atheists who then started getting very anti-women, anti-feminist, right?
Yeah. They're definitely not intelligent, and I don't find them entertaining either. So it's like,
are we ready to score them?
Yeah, I'm happy to. These guys seem like a massive menace to society. The fact that they're doing quite well.
I think this is a huge grift. I do think it's a grift. I don't think I don't know. They could believe all that.
I mean, I like how you can literally tell that one of them, this is his game, and the other one, I don't know their names, but the other one is like clearly less into this. Right, he goes. One of them goes off on one, right? Goes on a tear about women and men's rights and and the other one goes quiet at those moments.
Yeah, one of them is much vocal. I don't know.
Oh, is that just generally the dynamic on all topics? It's not just this one.
That's what I noticed, at least. Usually, the guy who ranting in that video is usually the one ranting about most stuff.
Okay.
Is it like a Penn and Teller type thing? Then?
A little bit.
So, have you noticed the YouTube videos where there's like these like black teens and apparently they're like listening to rock music for the first time ever? That's the
there's those reaction type vids.
yeah, and they're pretending like they've never heard of Metallica, which I don't know. Like, you tell me if that's possible.
I know. I think a lot
genuine.
of people have definitely not. I believe. I mean, there's a wider question of like that kind of content, like whether they've heard it or not for the first time is the important thing. It's a type of content that like some kind of, you know, like aged boomer rock listener just loves the idea that some kid is listening to the music that they
likes it, and they watch that light
and the kid,
up in their
you know,
eyes.
the kid producing the video like knows that if they're like, oh my, whoa, like the Beatles play good music, who would have known? And then the boomer gets to be like, oh, look at that, I feel vindicated and validated in my opinions. It's like it's a bit sad, I think.
Like watching like a reaction to your favorite artist for the first time. I love those types of videos. I'm like, yeah, I knew they were great. Look at this person reacting to them.
Exactly, and I feel like this is that, but for early YouTube, right? So I think
right.
these like 40-year-old people being like, "Oh, I remember the glory days of YouTube," and this is like the nostalgia fapping version of that.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I guess like the Red Pill was a subreddit, wasn't it? But that banned.
I think it got banned. For very good reasons.
Now, if you type in the Red Pill, it's that documentary, which I watched, but it was just like contentless from what I recall.
Oh, was that the woman pretending to discover that men's rights activists had a good point?
That's like the vibe of the show, but I don't really remember it.
Oh God, I remember watching that.
Yeah. But the thing is, I don't recall a single substantive part of it other than like, just I don't really like. Oh, maybe they're not too bad, but I was like, well.
Was the men's rights activist. He's like, I don't hate women. I just care about men. But I feel like if they wanted to do that better, they should have maybe focused more on the actual good MRAs, which if you're considering yourself an MRA, it's already kind of weird. Maybe just do like a focus on, hey, feminism also talks about men's issues and more ways.
That's the bit they always miss. And then you're like, oh, like there should be domestic shelters for abused men, and you're like, cool, let's fund that government program. And they're like, oh no, we're kind of libertarians as well. So you're like, right.
Guys who were like preaching it RA bullshit wouldn't be willing to like help with any like, you know, social issues, like any government funding to like, no, we're not gonna socialism. What do you think?
Yeah, we're here for pointing out problems, not for any tangible solutions. I think we're agreed that these guys are full grift, right?
But I was going to like possibly like question that to some degree, because I do fully believe that there are some people out there who, well, obviously do actually genuinely believe this, but sometimes having read like the Red Pill back in the day and just thinking, oh my God, these guys are so kind of lost, and you almost feel sorry for them at points. Obviously, they're so toxic, you don't really, for the most part. But I could believe that a lot of people just live in these worlds where they are just surrounded by toxic people, and there's a kind of cognitive bias where they just, because they're such trash, they only see other trash, and like that's the world they live in. Do you know what I mean? So it's just this kind of self-reinforcing thing, and on one level, again, like you kind of feel sorry for them a bit because they're just like stuck in these toxic traps of their own making to some degree, to a large degree. And I don't know. I could believe that these people are actually genuinely as immature, as stupid as they come across. I think the problem, quite broadly, with talking about like a lot of these right-wing people, is that the question of what a grift is and what is genuine is kind of it's like are they grifting or are they serious? And the answer is yes. I think is quite often the fact of it.
I feel like it could be serious. I've talked to people like this in real life. Like, there's no cameras around, so there's no incentive to act that way.
I think
there's some truth to how they act, probably.
The grift is high. I can tell, you know, that they are looking back at the greatest hits of YouTube in the early,
They
predominantly
peaked
white
high school. No, they did.
atheist, and
That was it.
go, let's tap into that. I think the pickup artist thing is phenomenal potency to make money, because it's one thing when you're trying to sell like neurotropics and protein powder.
Most of them sell.
Most
So
of them
that's
sell what? Sorry.
That's the key to being an alpha. You have to buy the protein products that each one sell. All of them sell some type of product.
I mean, the industry is huge though. Look at like FHM, Maxim. Like, how many magazines are there and websites are there dedicated to convincing young boys that they might get laid at some point? Right?
Exactly. There's this guy Alpha M who's one of the more tolerable. Oh God, I should have recommended him. Alpha M is actually someone I want to get your opinions on. He's one of the more tolerable like alpha guys. But I watched this video of like him explaining how he like became an alpha, like just lead alpha, and it was apparently by accident. He had the alpha name in this YouTube channel for like 10, 15 years before alpha was like a tribe of people. And then he was kind of always doing.
Oh, he was just a Greek nerd, right? Like...
Yeah, he was just like related to his company. He was like just kind of happy that way. And I've watched like a handful of his videos. I don't know how I ended up on this side of YouTube, but it was during like quarantine. I was like,
once you click on one video, the algorithm leads you down that rabbit hole. It's incredible.
Yeah, I didn't watch like many of them, only him, but most of his videos were just like mostly tame, and he was like mostly liberal. I was like, this is dangerous because he hasn't said anything bad, but his name Alpha is so like the name Alpha. The term alpha means a completely different thing than what I think he thinks it means. Because
and completely misunderstands how wolves actually work, by the way. But that's
that's
conversation.
I was also going to say, I mean, come on, we all know by now that alpha is just not good enough. It's all about the sigma grind set these days, isn't it?
Yes, I am a very devout, open sigma male, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think the grift is very hard here, and as we say, they might be saying genuinely what they think, but sex sells, and especially sex to virgins. Selling sex to virgins is like just very profitable, and it's why there's so many of these like pickup artists. You can do courses, you can do. So what they'll do is they'll fly you to Serbia or Venezuela, right? Like, and you do these holidays, and it costs a few thousand, and yeah, you'll be sleeping with girls, some of whom will be on the pay, and convinced that, oh my god, I'm a fucking Chad, yeah, because of this course, and you imagine their profit margins are quite high. It doesn't cost much to buy a few girls in the third world.
Have you seen their lectures where they're like in a room and they call some guy on stage to help him learn how to be more confident and stuff? It's kind of funny, but yet sad.
That does sound sad.
It's like a hypnotist, right? Like,
yeah, basically. It's so weird. He has like a sit-in woman in one of them, I believe. He's like, now flirt with her. I'm like, this is awful. Like, I would be cringing so hard if I was in that crowd. I'm like, no, actually, I'll figure it out myself.
It's such, on the grift point, it's like the oldest insecurity for a lot of people. Like, and I mean, like, just like society, culturally, go back 1,000 years, and I think
no one will love you.
But you go back 1,000 years, and people, like, teenagers probably thought the same thing. Go back 10,000 years, then people probably thinking the same thing. It's the oldest insecurity. Is one of the most pervasive, probably the hardest shift. I don't think, like most teenagers or even into early 20s, a lot of people feel that insecurity. I don't think a lot of people don't start kind of getting over it until like kind of mid 20s, I guess. And if your audience is mostly below that, then it's just like shooting fish in a barrel, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of them feel like they're talking to like a high school freshman or something.
Yeah.
And as the lady alluded to, like, they're just talking about getting their dicks wet, and it's like, can you not admit that men want a bit more than that sometimes? It's like,
it's also very heteronormative. I'm like, all right, there's plenty of queer kids out here who need a little more advice that
Oh
doesn't
no!
really.
So that's an interesting
You know
question.
how hard it was to
Are,
find
are
a
there gay pickup artists, or is it just not necessary?
No, there's none. It was so difficult. I figured this shit out myself.
Is it difficult? Because I like, and like this will be interesting. Like, please check me if I'm about to say something terrible. But I've hung out with a few gay friends, and maybe it's because they're older. But you know, they're just like, walking down the street and they see another guy, and they're like, "Hey, you want to come back to mine?" And he goes, "Oh no, you look a bit old." He's like, oh, "I'm really good at sucking dick," and the guy's like, "Okay, I'll give you my number." Like, so my impression was it's just a lot easier for gay men to get laid than in the male-female interaction.
I don't know. I see like it's kind of like a easier in some ways, but not easier in a lot of ways. Because down here it's definitely not that easy. I live in the southern part of the United States, so that's a lot more difficult. But
Right.
there's apps and stuff, which makes it very easy to like meet and like have sex with people very easily. But relationship wise, it can be hit or miss. Because you can pretty much only find them through apps a lot of the time if you don't know where you're looking.
Well, and that's where the pickup artist stuff, they can get you laid, right? But finding a relationship, a meaningful relationship with someone you actually like and want to spend time with, they have no advice for. That's where the well runs dry.
But that's where
I have no trouble getting laid. I don't need that. How do I get love, sir?
Yeah.
Exactly, but that's where the whole like nonsense falls apart when it becomes obvious that like even for people like who potentially do find it easy to get laid, that's not actually what they're looking for, because you get there and you're like, well, this isn't actually what I want, because they sit there saying like guys want sex. Clearly, that's not actually true. I know that because I've been a guy for like 31 years. It's just like I don't just walk around and be like, oh, I just want to fuck all the time. It's just complete nonsense. I don't know any of my male friends who would. I mean, my friends are all like,
well again,
not blokey
15-year-old,
anyway,
right?
like,
There's this age when you're 15 where that's kind of all you're thinking about for a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
that is.
And that's why I say when you understand that that's their audience, this whole
I keep forgetting.
makes sense.
I keep forgetting that. I guess it's because you see, like, I mean, they're more like in their early 30s. You see them and you assume like they must be talking to like people vaguely.
They act like they are. I guess not. They pretend like they're adults. Yeah.
It's like you quickly find out that you're not part of the audience when you're like not. It's so weird.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's the best way to put it, really. We're just not part of the audience, are we? Yeah. But yeah, Grift. Okay, yeah, Grift. I try to problematize it a bit, but yeah, it must be like a 5 or something like that. I mean,
low. I mean, I haven't watched much of them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm gonna go 1.
Okay.
I feel it does need to be low.
Out of interest, above or below Dave Rubin?
Below, definitely below.
Okay, 0.5.
They couldn't even really think of a single, even like witty remark to that woman. Like they just had nothing to say. It was just absolute brain dead nonsense. So
no, and she pointed out, where are they based? Miami, LA?
Atlanta, I want to say.
Okay, you can just tell they invite models, strippers, right, to come sit next to them and be like, bitches ain't shit. And then these girls who are paid to be there are like, and they're like, no, debate a girl. And they're like, I just, you know, like Ben Shapiro slam dunking on a 17-year-old in a debate, right? Like,
yeah, it's like people get this sick joy out of watching attractive women get destroyed.
Right.
Okay.
People do, yeah, people do.
But you invite a model onto your show and say, you know, she's there to smile and be complicit and complacent and like
not there.
And again, if they ever invited someone on that was smart enough and angry enough to say like, shut the fuck up, here's where you're wrong, they'd edit the shit out of that video and it'd never see the light of day, right?
There's a clip of it that happened recently, not too long ago. They weren't American. I can't determine where their accent from, but they were just like going off on them, and they cut them off and like kicked them out of the call.
Good. So how dangerous are these gents and pickup artists in general to society?
I'm gonna say their danger is a little up there. There is some harms to be done with that much like lack of sunlight.
I wouldn't be surprised if you know, most of the mass shooters in the last few years have watched many of the YouTubers we're discussing right now, right?
No, they're all in that same little niche, really.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
It's like definitely up there.
And yeah, like white nationalists and incels. This kind of feels a bit incel-y. They're the two kind of main groups which are like currently. Well, I mean, beyond like whack job Protestants in the United States. Like those kind of the two main people who are like literally doing terrorist things, aren't they? Like incels, white nationalists. This is leaning right into that incel thing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's pretty silly. Yeah, Menace Society. I'm gonna put them right below the peak. Only because I feel like there's enough people, like when you search them, like shitting on them, to where a reasonable person might be able to work out. They shouldn't listen to them.
Feels like they're not big enough to be a 5. There must be like a 3.5 or a 4 or something.
Yeah, feels like they're not.
Again, I blame Google. They're on the conveyor belt. It's not their fault. They're not inciting violence, but they're a necessary part of the chain that leads that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a 3 or.
Do you find them entertaining?
I find people shitting on them to be entertaining. Exactly.
I struggled, mate. Yeah. My favorite bit about this was laughing at them. I found they had very little of substance or interest to say.
Let's give them a 2.
Yeah. Quite low, I think.
Will they be around in 5 years?
No. I'm gonna say no.
I can't see them having much of a legacy. Yeah, they're very much they feel like a covers act, don't they? Really, like they have that vibe.
Are they C or D tier?
I'm gonna put them D.
Nice.
Yeah, wait, C because like they create content from existing, but only because they get shit on. So. Without them, we wouldn't have a lot of very good, shitting on them compilations, and
this
we wouldn't have, just watched.
I mean, one of those things. Dave Rubin is D and has fantastic reach.
Yeah. I was going to say, but no one actually watches.
Famous.
No one watches Dave Rubin these days. He's like, so everybody so far. If we take those two out, Fresh and Fit, or Fit and Fresh, whatever it is, Sam Harris is kind of feels like he's a bit in his twilight days of like that kind of big impact. Milo definitely.
All of them. This feels like the Twilight Zone, right?
But these guys could be ascendant. That's the point. Dave Rubin's past his bet. These guys could be on the way up. So it's kind of only the future could tell. So there's a potential. I feel like maybe the potential to move up into C, but they're just not big enough for impact yet. But I feel like there is that potential. Because these days, I mean, like we looked it up last time. Sam Harris has like around half of their subscribers. So like they're doing pretty well. That's pretty big.
Yeah,
their Grift is better. That's true.
Yeah, they are getting popular. They're getting infamous and famous at the same time.
It's really hard to compare numbers historically, though, because like you look at like album sales 20 years ago versus album sales now. You can't compare the two. You look at YouTube numbers 5 years ago versus YouTube numbers now. What you can say is 5 years ago that person was the biggest person on YouTube at the time. Right, like 20 million is the new 5 million. I'll put it that way. Right?
And also, like Sam Harris again, he's real world famous. He's written books. He's done some journalism. I think he's written actual like articles and stuff like that. He's had like widely publicized conversations.
Sam Harris is the only person on this list who could be invited to speak at Oxford, Cambridge, MIT.
Well, Jordan Peterson, who literally
tried to get into Oxford and Cambridge, and they told him to fuck off.
No, I'm sure I feel like he has. I'm sure he has talked at Oxford once or something.
He talked once, and then he tried to study there, and they went, "No, we."
Okay,
and he was very sad about that. He wanted to, because he wanted to put it on his resume, right? And they were like, "Nah, no, we're okay."
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No, I see.
Go tidy your room, Jordan, and get back to us.
So so no, I agree. Like a D tier, but like I maybe in 10 years' time they'll have proven themselves to be not 10 years. I do think in 10 years they'll fizzle out. But over the like 3 or 4 years, who knows? They could be on the ascendant.
That's fair. Because I find very little to be like watchable about them.
Yeah, no, they're thoroughly entertaining.
Not for the meme, laugh at them, but even though that's just annoying and sad.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, there is a big difference between laughing at and laughing with. So, let's move on to the Don, the daddy, Joe Rogan. I think this will divide the group. I'm interested.
He's such a weird person. He's not political, but sometimes he seems real. Other times it's like, what are you doing?
Part of the problem is he makes so much content that I notice often the left takes a few interviews he's done with terrible people out of context and says, "Oh, he is a right-wing propaganda mouthpiece," and he is used as that. But that partly is just, I think, honestly, at this point, he has more viewers than CNN.
Yeah, I think he's just a big opportunist and doesn't like think about what's going on.
I mean that, like, if you look at his numbers, people concurrently watching Joe Rogan, I think he beats some of the major cable channels these days, right?
Yeah,
he's a fucking force. I heard comedians talk about it. It's like, it used to be the be all and end all to go on one of these late night talk shows, but they have less viewers than Joe Rogan these days.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan.
So realizing that is that, yes, he's used by weird right-wing people to promote their shit. Yes, he enables them and gives them a platform. But if you actually are a full-time subscriber fan, watch every episode of Joe Rogan, that's 1 in 15 episodes. He's actually always getting people on. He loves hiking and hunting. Most of it's like a men's fitness or men's health magazine. Like, it's so much of that content, really. I'm not apologizing for Rogan here. We'll get into the bad stuff. Don't worry. but that's the weird thing about Joe Rogan.
I am frozen.
We can still hear you.
Nope. He was coming through fine, but I don't know what happened there.
Video off and on again. You're back. That's fine.
So
Rogan's entertaining if he has the right person on. So I don't want to. I feel like entertainment is going to be hard to place.
This is where it gets hard. So I remember years ago, Joe Rogan, like, he was just known by the internet dwelling degenerates like myself and like my partner, for example. She didn't have a clue who he was. I'd make jokes
about. Did anyone watch news radio?
Yes. No, that's before my time.
I'm old enough to remember.
I've watched news radio. I used to watch Joe Rogan in news radio. I would have never believed, that right now Joe Rogan would be in the position that Joe Rogan is today, right? With such a million influence, such a big crowd.
I mean, he was early to the podcast game, right?
Not in that day.
He's very early to the podcast game, yeah.
And so for those that don't know, on news radio, he played kind of a caricature of himself. He was this weird conspiracy theorist bro, right? There was all these smart people talking serious news, and he was like, I want to talk about aliens or Bigfoot, and they were like, yeah, whatever, young idiot temp. And it was just beautiful how that became a metaphor for what happened, and that he just was like, fuck it, I'm just going to sit around with my friends recording a podcast. So, and that ended up taking over media. He was ahead of the right wave, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say, so he was early to the podcast game, and I like seeing him now. He kind of he's more clearly in that kind of orbit of like right-wing nonsense. He talks a lot to Ben Shapiro types, people like that. And I
in fact, I'm trying to think who on this list hasn't he interviewed.
Oh wow,
he's interviewed Elon Musk, Gavin McInnes, Candace Owen,
Douglas Murray.
He hasn't interviewed Paul Joseph Watson, I don't think.
No, thank God.
And not either, although there was hinted that they would. I don't know if that actually happened.
He's had Steven Crowder on, although they had a very weird argument about weed.
Yeah,
he's had Steven Crowder was like, weed makes you go crazy and commit crimes, and Joe Rogan was like, shut the fuck up, bro, get out of here. Of all the things to push Joe Rogan on, he was like,
Joe Rogan, he is like it's not a heliocentric universe, it's a Joe-centric universe. That's what's going on in it, because like
the best meme I heard is of Joe Rogan like Genghis Khan, who just invites all these smart people and it's like, what why you say this is true, this is not true.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yeah.
I want to know what the conversation after that weed thing was, because like I feel like Steven Crowder does not believe weed is actually harmful. Like you cannot can't. Please tell me not.
We'll get on Steven Crowder, but half of what he says, I know he doesn't believe, and it's just for the fucking grift. And it shows when he gets on a certain track where you're like, like, we'll get that. Steven Crowder is an actor. Like of all the people in here, I think Steven Crowder is like the maximum grift score.
So on the point of Joe Rogan, I was saying, because he's been around for so long, and I thought it was a more recent thing, this kind of like right wing thing. But there are actually old videos of him. He said there's an old clip, well, basically tons of him saying really quite racist stuff actually, and not just.
Well, this was the problem. He got bought out by Spotify, right?
Yeah.
His back catalogue, and going through it, people are like, here's a compilation of 150 videos of him using the N-word. And it's like...
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, you know,
but
this is going to sound really bad. That's only 0.1% of his video content.
It's not even that, because that's the kind of thing that a lot of people would be like, oh, well, that is just edginess. So I agree, obviously it's bad, but a lot of people would be like, well, that is just edgy. But there are other times where he's even just explicitly saying shit where he's just like, what's one? He said he went to see the film Planet of the Apes. I could be slightly wrong, but he went to see a film and it was in like a black part of town, and he said he got out of the taxi and it was like being in Planet of the Apes, and he goes on about that for a while, and it's just like, what? Joe Rogan has always been actually a bit of a dickhead, but he hid it behind this kind of, hey Jamie, pull up a picture of a chimpanzee, let's talk about DMT kind of character, which I don't think is a character actually.
A volume of content, like, really hides many sins, right?
Yes,
it's like grandpa racist humor, like.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, but like he is this. I found this out the other day. He is like 62, which feels unreal because he is he acts like a 25-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the best I've heard him described as is like, before the internet, you'd go around your friend's house and he'd have an older stoner brother who'd be like, "Hey guys, and let me tell you about aliens."
No, sorry.
Like, whoa!
Sorry.
And he blew your mind. You're like, whoa.
I was wrong. I must have been thinking about something else I read. He's 54. I was wrong by 4.
Okay.
But I was wrong by 8 years. But he is older. He does look it now. I'm not trying to insult him, but you know he does look maybe 54. But to think that this dude is 54 and he acts like a mid-20s frat bro.
No, he does give that vibe. Frat bros love Joe Rogan. He's just older stoner brother vibe, definitely. I feel like he was taken to the triangle.
I've at times loved his content, but it's the highlight reel of a man that's made. I mean, I actually probably more than 100,000 hours of content at this point, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like a documented life. He is the ultimate reality TV star. From Fear Factor, right, to even UFC. Like I love fighting. But there is something very backwards and gladiatorial about paying people under capitalism to punch each other in the face until some person loses consciousness.
I hate but love UFC so much. It's so entertaining, but seeing people like bloody, I'm like,
it's a guilty pleasure, right? Like it's fast food nonsense.
Like, no, that's the point, but stop it.
Honestly, I've never personally seen the appeal of like the fighting stuff. When I was like a kid, like all kids, like wrestling was cool, and then you find out it's fake and it becomes lame. And I just never even understood the appeal past that age of even like any fighting.
Okay, I'm about to sell fighting to you, but
I was gonna say I think the brain damage is a little bit terrifying to me, and I think Joe Rogan might be a case in point. And I'm not trying to like dunk on him unnecessarily, but again, like this dude is incredibly dumb, which does make it even more interesting when he does manage to dunk on someone intellectually, like he does with Dave Rubin.
Because he's fearless. Like this is what the fighter background is. Yeah. So he'll invite some guest on. Like I think Donald Trump asked to go on his show, and he said, "Sure. Just fly to my studio in Austin, Texas, and we'll have you on." And Trump's like, no, you have to come to me. And here's the script, and here's the pre-approved questions. And Joe Rogan went, well, then no, fuck you. Like, come to my house, and we'll have a free conversation, and those are the terms. And I actually like talk about this on Grift. I think he's surprisingly low on the score, despite his success. He has won by being true to his fucking self, and that is, whatever you think about him, remarkably impressive. He
Yes,
was
no,
just
you are right,
ahead of the curve of the right big wave.
But that fearlessness is interesting because it's actually quite funny. I was talking, it must have just been a week or two ago with my girlfriend, and I was talking about a really embarrassing clip that I remember hearing years ago. So I had to look it up again. I played it to her. And it's quite an old podcast episode, or it is by now. And he has like a primatologist on, and he says he's talking about like a cryptid, some completely like made up. It's like Bigfoot kind of thing. In some forest somewhere, and he's like, "Have you not heard of this? Have you not heard of this at all?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "That's nonsense. It's not a real report." And he genuinely, he's really unpleasant in it. He comes right at her. He's like, "When did you get your degree?" She's like, I got a PhD in primate studies. I spent like years in Africa and all this." And he's like, "You don't know your stuff. Where do you get your PhD from? I bet it's not a proper institution. Like your knowledge is out of date now." And he's full blown like pit bull. Like he goes like attack dog on her, and it's really, really quite actually embarrassing because obviously he's an absolute fucking idiot, and she knows what she's talking about, and she just kind of laughs, and he just steamrolls her, and then chucks her off the call, and he's just really clearly, genuinely pissed off. Like he's clearly annoyed. His pride is wounded.
There's a few moments.
This dude is mental.
There's a few moments where
he was like that with Adam Ruins Everything too.
Yes, exactly. So Adam Ruins Everything was trying to describe trans things to him, and it had been going on like they all do, this trans tear, interviewing all these right-wing talking heads who are like panicking, pearl clutching. Oh, won't someone think of the kids? And yeah, Adam Ruins Everything was trying to explain it to him, and he just, aggressively tried to alpha male him. And Adam did a pretty good job of like. And again, it depends who you ask, right? To a Joe Rogan fan, Joe Rogan destroys Adam. But for me, objectively watching it, I think that was quite a turning point in the debate, realizing like, wow, these guys have a real axe to grind, and they're not willing to listen to any facts whatsoever.
Right,
yeah. So irritating, because even to like a viewer who doesn't know shit about it, they're like, believe in Joe because it's his like podcast. It's a struggle of content creation. You can always clip it to make it in your favor.
Yeah.
And again,
which is what
to be
Chris
fair
will
to
be
Joe,
doing with this episode.
I'm just going to selectively cut it, so every time you agree with me, I'll be like, yeah, it'll just be a cut of people being like, yes, Chris. Good point. Like, fortunately, you haven't been saying that enough. This will be a very short edit. So.
Yes, Chris, I agree. You can just use that, just clip that, just loop it somewhere else in the episode.
The thing, God, I don't know why I want to give Joe his due, because he really has platformed some of the worst people. Most of the worst right wing. I don't think he's interviewed Stefan Molyneux.
He interviewed this one.
He has. He definitely has talked to Stefan ages ago. Yeah, he definitely has.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then I take back a lot of positive things I was about to say, because
this is ages ago. I don't think Stefan was particularly well known back then. Let's see when it was.
When you start talking about economics and you start talking about
episode 2017.
2017, so not that long ago. Not long ago enough, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about Stefan, but Stefan is, he takes Charles Murray's IQ bell curve stuff ad infinitum, right? Like he is really a white supremacist.
Absolutely, he just really is.
Premises on. I remember watching a clip of this one guy arguing that Africans weren't gardening and doing like yard work or whatever. They didn't have access to that before the Europeans. Like, yeah. I'm like, what? Hold on now. He was like, he also said something about it wasn't really much, war and violence going on in Europe during this time. That wasn't really like them. You just ignored slavery like completely.
Also, there is no period of European history except about 70 years ago, since 70 years ago, where there hasn't been loads of war. Europeans, we are the best at killing each other. That's all we've fucking done for a few thousand years.
Interesting pushback there. The period of European history that's one of the most peaceful? It's called the Dark Ages. And historians hate that term, but pretty much it's like fucking no one was dominating anything. People were free to go about their business. Fucking dark. And you're like, literally, dark, why? You look into it, it's like, yeah, no, loads of shit was getting invented, loads of politics was getting discovered, but there wasn't a big war with imperial conquest. So some historians are just like, well, it's the boring period.
Yeah.
Before we hated each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like Joe Rogan because, as I say, the highlight reel of his content has appealed to me at some certain points in my life. So I have this bias towards wanting to defend him. But when you see shit like Stefan Molyneux in 2017, him defending the worst of, not defending but promoting, he's got a platform of however many 100 million, and he'll bring on Charles Murray. He always brings on people like Brett Weinstein. Like,
Oh, I can't stand that guy.
yeah, like he gives a platform to the worst of the worst. And as I say, when you watch it in the round, he's not as much of a right-wing megaphone as he's sometimes presented as, because it's 1 in 15 episodes, but that's only because he makes so much fucking content.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in effect, he has been the largest promoter. Like I say, these days, going on Joe Rogan's podcast is a bigger deal than going on a Fox News show. More people will see your shit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just for him to unquestionably, like we've said, he'll drill into someone saying any left-wing talking point, and just sit back and mostly agree with some of the most controversial right-wing talking points.
Yeah, but I think the reason like he ends up being more likable than he has any right to be is because of that, what I think is like a low grift rating, because you're watching me, you're like, well, you can't help but be like, oh, he's just an idiot. Like, if he had a podcast that a few thousand people listen to, you'd watch it and you'd be like, well, it's kind of charming, and it does have that entertaining thing, because he's like, oh, you know, bring up a picture of a chimpanzee. Oh my God, look, someone shaved a chimpanzee. Look at all the muscles on the chimpanzee. And he's obsessed with chimpanzees. And he loves DMT. And so it's just like, it's kind of goofy and weird. But then because he goes so big, he's like, oh, let's get Stefan Molyneux on. Let's get Ben Shapiro on. Let's get all these insane people on. And it's just, yeah. You become so wealthy and so big past a certain point that you're just out of sync with everything anyway. And, you know, he did always have those racist elements. And a few, you know, I think he is sexist in a kind of old-fashioned way at the very least, but you always kind of want to believe that maybe it's not that bad. But I don't know whether that's just us being naive, because when he does say some things, it is like, oh, it is a bit naive to think he's not a bit of an asshole.
I'll call out two things. Did you see him have Ben Burgess on? You guys know Ben Burgess?
Yeah, I didn't know he was on, but I know him.
Yeah, great left-wing academic, and he came on, and the reason he was on because he wrote a book called like Canceling Comedians. He did this, you know, classic like, what's it called? God, I hate when you lose the word. Class reductionist. Right. So he did this great thing about how, oh shit, the liberals are focusing too much on cancel culture when there are bigger issues at play. We're trying to cancel Dave Chappelle when we should be focusing on this in politics. And if you read the book, it has nuance, and he's a very intelligent Marxist. But that's the only reason he had a foot in the door with Joe Rogan, because that was the headline of the book that Joe clearly had never read. And so he invites Ben Burgess on, and Ben Burgess is like, you know, didn't hard debate him, but because he was aware of the audience watching, was like, you know, you've invited some real hard right weirdos on your show, and to be clear,
Has Sam Cedar ever been on?
Who, sorry?
Has Sam Cedar ever been on Joe Rogan?
Bizarrely, no. And this is the thing, like, he doesn't invite smart people on the left. If sometimes he invites a punching bag from the left on.
David, anybody? Any of the head lefties?
Yeah, this is the problem. It's never the heavyweights, right? Like Ben Burgess is one of the few people, because he did this book with the clickbait headline, was allowed to go on the show, and they had a great chat. And I think it was really good for Joe Rogan's audience to hear from Ben. And I'm glad he wasn't too combative. You were sorry?
That's very weird. He's gonna have Candace Owens on. You can have fucking Sam Cedar on.
right? Oh God, we'll get to Candace Owens another day.
Yeah.
She is toxic as fuck. But
She's
her
another
appearance
person-
on Joe Rogan was hilarious.
I was
where,
gonna say
again,
another
she starts
person who got
denying
demolished.
climate change, and again, Joe, to be fair, just goes, "Sounds like you don't know what you're talking about." And she's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Yeah, that could be possible."
Candace Owens dedicated to that grift.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
as soon as, like I say, like I know it's a culture war, and then as soon as they start attacking environmental science, I'm like, I know who pays your bills. Like, it's the Koch brothers, right? And, like, as soon as that happens, I'm like, and that's who pays your bills, right? Like, you see the whole show, and then you get the ad break, and as soon as they shit on environmentalism, I'm like, yep, that's this whole show is sponsored by that little segment there. That's the
true.
fucking key. Oh, Joe. Did you see his moment with Carlos Mencia?
I vaguely remember.
Yeah. Anyone big into comedy knows this, because Carlos Mencia was like huge.
I know that name.
Comedy. God, it must have been 15 years ago now, right? So he had this big show on Comedy Central, and a big comedy club in LA, and Carlos Mencia was stealing all these people's jokes, and this happens all the time. But here's the difference: Joe Rogan, professional fighter, has a big audience on his YouTube channel and doesn't give a shit, right? Like, no one wants to rock the boat, right? Like, God, don't piss off this big person because they're well connected. And this is back in the day when there were all these gatekeepers. And Carlos Mencia is at the comedy club performing. Joe Rogan gets on stage, grabs his mic, and just starts laying into, you stole this joke, you stole this joke, you stole this joke, you stole this joke, you're full of shit, you're a thief, like, we got no respect for you, da 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 da. And that, I think, for me and for many, was like, we talk about Jordan Peterson's moment, right? Like, it was the same with Joe Rogan. Like, it was his big flash and pan moment. And I think at his best, Joe Rogan is prepared to speak truth to power. The problem is, like a lot of old rich men, he often, the truth he's speaking is to these people that might cancel him.
Mhm.
And it's just, cry me a river for the millionaire comedian who's like, I might be cancelled. And you're like, you won't.
Even if you are, you'll be fine. You have enough.
Yeah.
Oh, literally, if you are, you'd be better. You turn it into a press release, right? Like,
Yeah.
You release a book, buddy, you'll be good for probably the rest of your life.
I do feel like there comes a point that if you're so rich and you're still seeking wealth, like, that is just a mental illness. If I was Joe Rogan rich, like, what?
I'm coming
Why-
out with this theory where I
why
have
are we still
respect
doing-
for millionaires. I have concern for billionaires. Anyone that gets a
Right,
million
yeah.
is like, times 1,000. You're like, are you okay, hun? Like, what's going on?
But
It's
if
like, I need
people,
more money because
Yeah, where you can't enjoy $1 million.
What's
You're
the
like,
buy?
fuck this shit.
people always say this about is it Tom, the MySpace guy, because he just sold it, and then he just goes around taking photos. He's a photographer. That's his hobby. He's just like a chill guy with, like, I think he got like 200 odd million or something like that.
Yeah, and
which
look
is
how
like
toxic the
insane
internet
amount of
became.
money, right? It's insane amount of money, but
It's
it's still
enough.
not that much compared to so many other people. It's like,
It's
that's
enough.
fine. I'm kind of okay with that.
Look at
that's
how
fine.
weird Zuckerberg has gone.
Yes, exactly.
He bought out an entire like neighborhood or something. Like, ugh.
Oh
I'm
Jesus.
he's such a strange person.
What, Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he deserves an episode of his own. So, Joe Rogan, are we saying low on Grift? Do we think he's genuine?
I
dude?
think so, yeah. Like, maybe I'm just bad at reading it, but I'd say like you can't be without it, right? So it's like a 1 or a 1.5 in my opinion.
I mean, he turned down the Trump interview, which is, that's
Respect. Yeah.
pretty great opportunity to grow.
He's turned down all sorts. The mental thing. I remember he worked out that he made more money recording a podcast at home watching the UFC fights on TV with his friends who are like professional fighters than having to fly to some fucking stadium and sit there and watch it live.
Right.
And there's times like that where it's just like, I'd just rather sit at home with my mates smoking weed. and I do know, like, for all his flaws, there are many of your favorite comics who Joe Rogan mentored along the way and gave him advice to, and I've heard, like, when clubs were closing down, he was putting on shows, and like, he's a right-wing dickhead, but he does a lot, right? Some of it good, some of it bad. It's
yeah. I personally feel like he's low on the grift. He's also quite low on the intellect.
Yeah, I mean, is it too generous? I like some of his takes sometimes, man.
You could say he,
like, in a good way, but other times he just agrees with the most, like, brain dead.
I like when he disagrees. I hate when he just nods along with the worst sentence I've just ever heard.
yeah, that might be a good way. Like, he's not actually that bad at disagreeing. Like, he can do it, like, well, not always. That primate thing that I said before was really quite embarrassing. But, like, a lot of the time you see him disagreeing, it's actually not too bad. But a lot of the time he's just like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. I believe that, yeah, DMT probably was given to us by aliens, and that the Aztecs, used that to, like, interdimensionally travel to other planets. It's like, no.
I'll just briefly touch on this. I think it's a really interesting example of survivorship bias. So you look at why are there pyramids in Mayan culture, Egyptian culture, Cambodia, and the simple answer is people have been building buildings loads of different types of ways for millennium, and the best constructed buildings are the only ones that survive. And then we look around and go, look, oh my God, there's a pyramid in that country, and a pyramid in that country, and a pyramid in that country. It's like, you know why? The pyramid is a fucking solid construction base which to build a building, and all the other shapes they tried fucking crumbled.
It's really quite obvious, isn't it? I actually put like that because it's like, oh, it's a huge base, and then the next level gets a bit smaller, and then it gets a bit smaller. It's like, that might be the most stable way of building something.
Yes. And is it that was given by aliens, or is it that we've built loads of buildings for loads of years? And
I'm not convinced that humans could have worked that out without aliens. I think that's basically what people are saying.
So I think there's something about Joe Rogan, like a broken clock. He's right twice a day. Like, he comes out with something, and he's onto something. He's good on the attack. But yeah, my God, he's a weirdo. He's
march the streets.
What, sorry?
I don't think he would be marching in the streets very often, though.
No. I his main cause is hanging out, smoking weed, and chatting shit with his friends. I will give him this, though. He's an incredible salesman. So, did you watch his interview with Elon Musk?
I did, yes.
So, where he got him to smoke weed, I actually have shown that to sales teams, an example of a brilliant sales pitch. Because the way he does it is like, do you want this? Oh, no, you probably can't have it. He takes it back from him. He's like, no, you can't have it, is what he says. Like, it's literally like a planned sales pitch where he, like, offers it, withdraws the offer, right? And makes it clear, like, oh, no. And then passes it to Jamie and is talking about, oh, of course, because you've got commitments and shareholders. And so this is not for you, bro. And just, like I say, like, it's pitched as, oh my God, Elon Musk is so cool, he chose to smoke weed. I'm like, no, he got hustled. Like, Joe Rogan literally like ran circles around Elon Musk until he had to smoke that spliff. Until him saying no would have made him look so bad that he had to smoke it. And like, watch it again, I promise you. It is a perfect sales pitch.
Right.
And it's a lot better. Smoking it, he like loosens up a little bit.
Yeah.
Great tactic for podcasting.
Yeah, bit of whiskey, bit of weed. Is Joe Rogan a menace to society? I think often people are hysterical about this. People describe him as the Antichrist. He pushed hard for Bernie. I'll give him that.
I think
I think
he's
up
not a
there-
zero though, is he? He's somewhere on this.
Yeah, because he like lets on menace to society all the time, though.
He platforms some awful people, yeah.
Like by association, I suppose. I will put him on a 2.
I'd
Yeah.
say a
Just
3
the multiplier of his power, like, honestly. All the other people on this list could platform the worst Nazis fraternity, and none of them would have as much effect as Joe Rogan platforming. And again,
Yeah.
he has platformed all of the worst people. Not all of them, but like he hasn't had Richard Spencer on, but he's had all of the pseudo-intellectuals that Richard Spencer quotes, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
dangerous
Only reason
level
not a
weirdo.
1 is that he has people who are sometimes not terrible.
And like
So,
I say,
Space for good
just-
done there. He suddenly becomes a lot more reasonable tomorrow, but that's probably not going to happen.
no, it's just weird how he lays into left-wing literal academics, but gives right-wing pseudo-Nazis a free pass. Like, it's
Yeah,
bizarre.
exactly.
All right, 3. I think that's fair. Entertainment.
Depends on who's there. I'm not there for Joe Rogan.
Right, he does have some interesting guests on. I think
does.
I've found out a lot of interesting people via Joe Rogan's podcast, so he's booking well. His
This
comedy is good. Like, I will put his comedy in the top tier.
Really?
More-
If you've seen much of his stand-up, I wouldn't put him in S tier comedy, but
Right,
he's
right.
like
I was
he's
gonna
A
say
tier
that-
comedy.
He's another person for me, kind of like Jordan, where his shtick originally really entertaining, but it does wear thin. It kind of goes
After 100,000 hours.
But he's done loads, but it gets to the point where it's like, oh, I'm getting a bit tired of it. But for a good while, it is entertaining. So before he kind of got really big, because at first he was just kind of internet big, and then he's real world big now. But when he was just internet big, like I remember like knowing all these memes about him, and I'd occasionally watch him very casually, and it would just be funny. And I don't know, there was a funny sense of like, oh, this is like in culture of internet humor, and like that was very entertaining. When he was at that point, he was like kind of on the periphery of what I watched and what I was interested in, but it was always entertaining to know there's this guy out there who smokes weed with his friends and just talks about chimpanzees and aliens. It's just like that was peak Joe Rogan for me, and I think he's just kind of gone downhill from there.
Yeah.
And legacy. I mean,
He's
so big. He's not
He's so
going to
big.
go away.
Like we talked about the Beatles before, he is the Beatles of podcasting. Do you know what I mean? Like whether that means he's the best, but he's just the biggest. Like he'll always be the touchstone to that now.
That's true. I think his legacy is pretty up there. Maybe like a 4.
So 4, 2, 2, 2.
That's right.
He's A. He must be A.
I think so, right? I love putting Tim at B makes me very reticent to put anyone else in the B class. I mean, I think it wouldn't. He's definitely above Jordan Peterson. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But is he S?
He's very close. I mean, you could make an argument for it, but I think the things that hold him back a little bit, like Alex Jones is, well, he's kind of a class by himself because he's been around so long. His legacy is huge. His legacy is almost like the entire kind of QAnon, like really crazy right wing at this moment in time.
Yeah.
He's not so big now. He's been kicked off every platform. But he's also very clearly right wing. If we talk about right wingedness,
Yeah,
Joe
that's what I'd
Rogan's
say
more of an
actually. Is that
enabler.
I think Joe Rogan is
Yeah, Joe
more
Rogan's very
impressive than Alex Jones, but less right wing, which is probably
He's like-
it's probably good not to score high on this tier. right?
exactly. Yeah, higher isn't better or bigger necessarily. It's just kind of like how right wing insane are they?
he's like more of a liberal / centrist to me.
Yeah. I think Joe Rogan is, and again, this is I talk about with the binary thinking, right? Like Joe Rogan on some things is very left. As I say, he's very much a Bernie bro, but yeah, like he spends a lot of time dunking on trans people and clearly has problems with racism. So
I feel like he's more entertaining and more like charismatic Temple. So maybe he should be in C or B.
Oh no, like yeah, we debated this whether to invert the tier list and like
Yeah.
better people go low, but I think he's above Tim Paul, so that's why he's A. Yeah.
All right.
I broadly agree with that. You know, we could quibble here and there on the edges, but this feels about right. Everyone we have so far, because you know, some of the
What I
people
love
in
is
the
all
lower-
of these people are still making content and could still change, right?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, Milo is the least relevant these days, but yeah, for a while he was very big.
All right, gents. I could talk about Douglas Murray, but I think we've ran long enough. I'll
I
save
think,
that
yeah,
for
it's
another
time to
time.
wrap up.
Thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you did too.
Mm-hmm.
I did. Lots of fun here. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, brilliant having you on. And if you want to come again and bring some other people, it's always good to have a different perspective, because the YouTube algorithm works different for us all, and it's amazing what like I've seen versus what other people have seen.
Really.
It's good to have an American perspective too. I appreciate it.
No, not a problem. It was nice meeting you all.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Thanks all. Take
Good to meet
care.
you.
Hopefully, let's do another one soon. All the best.
Cool. See ya. Bye-bye.